paper knife。
我已经拿好。
我拿下你的。我也是，我剩这节课必备。
啊不，我对录屏。这个视频的右上角，对字上。你看见我在这呼吸，看到位置会有动作。
是可以，但是看不到。
是的，但是我之前就是上那个 F1我就是上课不全，我去看他那个录屏，发现有人刺激。
我怎么是？
照到我能照到另外一个，能照到你那个，照不到我。上课什么都有，
老师
游戏看视频。
但是 F1上面写，我记得。
那种那你在哪开？
忘了不是上课。
对啊，但是他还有右上角
有个小屏，
对监控视频。
谁会看那个？都是看的。
好玩呀，看干啥？
这怕是老师有空的时候听一下自己上课，让自己一个身子站。
老师不是后来都上了，听我的。
老师沉默了一下子。Yes， 没什么好听的。这多生呀，多貌美啊！
想起来已经失忆了。
哎呀，会有道理啊！你说我们说。
So I volunteer for.
Wait, hours? Oh, first of all, you weren't even in that. No, they were voting for it, but they so we think we're gonna split the computer room. We took up like how? That was a problem. 因为我没学法律，但我学的是法律的人类。
每天是来从隔壁薅一个，假装我们也有过来。
笑死了。And then it was supposed to like we were almost expanding back returns and then like
想着再你看总有一个能配对上情感的人。
Oh.
And there's and I could
crazy.
Carol kind of off.
有那个位置看，拿着纸。
笑人好吗？
他指我身后一组。
我忘记我手里拿那个。
那个。
I was gonna draw.
我有这个，啊，这个。巧克力。什么巧克力？等等我，把这个代码写完，我就回来了。谢谢。可是你是好。那边是东西。
我家才来。
呀。
可以。
你算出来挺好赞。还在路上。中午吃饭。刚才有点忙。不是很好，我就不能一个人出门，一个人出门，一人。别打，因为这个。
这说不好，做菜，但是。
让他吃。吃就完。
Yes. They really like our technical sort of us. So it was like kind of. I get one there.
我都忘了，我是咱们俩一起买的。
I spokesperson. Original, but.
别名牌。我怀疑上节课他想点我厉害吗？我知道了。
没事，你最后主动。
That's like when I got so often. 那个真的非常的尴尬。Sorry.
I left. She like was in the summer. And I was just like, oh, it's the summertime. Did she like?
Yeah. 是的，我
I love it.
Cecil's right. Do anything. You don't have to.
Okay, it's 2:30. We'll start here in 1 minute after I answer my phone. I'm not gonna answer that. Okay. Pass this around. Oh, Arun. There you go. Okay, here we go. The sign-up sheet is working its way around to you. And I appreciate your name tags being up and computers being down. That's great. I only have one person that has not filled out the meet and greet thing. Guys, I need you to keep it down, please. Okay. I've only had one person, Sandra. Sandra here?
Yeah.
Okay, Sandra. So you weren't here the other day, so see me after class about making sure you get the meet and greet taken care of. Okay, if you're having a problem on that. And I apologize to you and to anybody who was not here last time because I forgot to do the video. We had a great session. I thought it was a lot of fun. And of course, on a great session, I wouldn't video it. I don't know. It's just sometimes it's easy to forget to do those steps at the beginning, and I did. Big important thing here. Administration has got back to me about test time, and they basically say, with the new system we have, we're not exactly sure what we can and can't do, but how about Wednesday, April 29th from 8:30 to 11:30? I'll send you an announcement out on this because I need to know if you cannot make it. So, because we'll redo it, and I'm thinking if we redo it, we just do it on Friday because usually Friday is wide open for everybody, right? I mean, typically, yeah, great.
That'd be Friday.
Be right after that. So whatever that would be, April 31 or May 1. Yeah. So does anybody know, like, oh no, this definitely conflicts with something? Yeah, Jacob.
I scheduled a flight on Wednesday because I didn't think I had a final after Tuesday.
Oh, you're gonna create some problems here.
Take it earlier than 8:30.
Yeah. Okay. Because you thought it was, but
The previous professor that was supposed to teach us class, he didn't have time. Like it was like I didn't final.
Is that a request?
No.
No.
Well,
Just mentioning it. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna have to think about that. Actually, you do give me something of an idea on how to do, what we can do. But like I told you at the beginning of the semester, I've had problems unfortunately, with people not being honest in the responses. And so let me think about that myself. But as of right now, aside from trips out, you could be there. Okay. All right. And I'll confirm this with an announcement so that I can get with the administration and maybe figure out something different. But if it were on Monday, for example, or even the week before on a Friday, what about that? The week before on a Friday, we got problems. Okay. All right. This is not going to be easy. I can see that right now. Not going to be easy. Okay. So just to let you know, I'm reviewing the work that your group turned in before. And I thought it'd be a good time to remind you, especially with the WorldCom thing coming up on Thursday, how the grading gets done. On a typical WorldCom or on these business cases, the score is going to be a 7. If you answer the correct question in kind of a bare bones, sort of minimal, here's an answer to your question. And then you're going to get an 8.5 if you demonstrate full comprehension of the question and you fully explain your response. Maybe consider some alternatives, but to get the 10, you need to go a step above that. Do everything for an 8.5, and then add to that original thought. Add to that external. Kelly, I really need you. Kelly. Kelly, please, please. You're irritating me. Okay. So thank you. All right. To get a 10, you wanted to do everything that's an 8 and 5, and then add any original thought, external resources, something to complement your answer, make it deep, make it fulsome, make it like that's a rich response, that's thoughtful, okay? And so in this last case, just to let you know how this thing is being graded, with Blooming Hard, we didn't have so much research, although there could be some research done on that. We're looking for a 7 if it's pretty much a bare minimum response, right? Okay, I answered your question in some way. An 8.5 if there's more detail, some modest analysis, some modest thoughtful consideration, and 10 if it's a comprehensive, thoughtful analysis, full response in detail. So just letting you know, that's the way we'll go through, and the way that we grade it, we grade by question. So in other words, we go through the question, all 13 groups or 11 groups, and then sort of rank them question by question. So we don't read your whole thing through. We just do it question by question. So it's easier to spot, okay, that one's a really good answer, and that one's not really telling us too much. Okay, just to let you know. So let's recap from where we were last week. I told you last time we're going to put the Kohlberg stages for later, and that's still what we're going to do. We talked about the lessons from cheating and in terms of what does this mean in terms of from a business perspective. We'll get into that again today in a certain way. And we went through the short business cases of just making up numbers and the General Electric case with firing people because we think they won't do, they have family situations, to the Blooming Hard, the case of Joe Bloom. So that's what we got through. So today I want to wrap up 2 cases that's really from last week, shorter cases. Talk about the ethical decision-making model, which kind of summarizes all that we've done up through week 2. And then get into some lecture on, the reason we're having to have ethics cases. There was a point in time when the accounting majors didn't take ethics cases, okay? But then we had so many breakdowns. And we're just kind of go over some of those breakdowns and kind of what occurred and how the market responds to that and what kind of demands they're making of accountants. So how do we get where we are today? And I want to do something kind of unique because I've given you the Walmart case for Thursday. It's a short case, but it has to do with people that are working in other countries and where the ethical standards are different than your own country. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act puts some limitations on what we can do, but what do you do when your employees in other countries are doing things they're not supposed to do? Okay. Are we okay? Is everybody okay with the temperature? Are you cold? Okay, if we all start sweating, we're gonna come back and ask you to turn that down, but okay. All right. All right. I didn't know we could just even mess with it, but that's, and you may not be changing anything by the way. Sometimes it's set, but you can play around with it, but you don't really change anything. All right, so let's, any questions on where we're going, where we've been, what's going on, and so forth? Okay, hearing none, let's go to the cases. And the first one was winning takes care of everything. And this is very timely because they use an example here that is in the news this week. And that is the example of Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, famous golfer. And the story from the case is that Tiger has had some personal difficulties for many years now. Had some embarrassing situations, extramarital affairs, and so on and so forth. And Nike, who sponsors these athletes and pays them millions of dollars to promote their product, while they were dropping some of their Lance Armstrong, who was caught cheating and taking drugs to win bicycling races. And Oscar Pistorius, I forget exactly, oh yeah, he shot his girlfriend. That was a problem for him. So they dropped him. But they kept Tiger. They kept Tiger. And so the issue that came up is, why do guys like Tiger get kept on and others that have some blemishes in their personal life they get dropped. And so the idea was, well, Tiger is a consistent winner. You know, he's been a winner since the beginning of time. I'll give you a quick example on that attitude. I have to give you a little. This is a little funny spot for you, okay? And this is let me. This is the point of view that winners are always winners. And I have to give you a little background on this video clip. It's about 1 minute long. The background is that one of the characters in the show had gotten very mad at his boss and said terrible things to the boss. Hold on. And the boss fired him. And so his idea is if he goes back in and just acts like it never happened and, you know, act like he was just joking with the boss, that everything will be okay. But there's a very funny thing in here that has to do with winners are always winners. So check this out. So he showed up at the meeting even though he was supposedly fired because he had this temper tantrum. And the boss says, "What are you doing here?" So let's check it out. Okay. Anyway, I like you're there. That little thing. I'll always be a winner, and you're there. Okay. So there's an attitude that winners are always winners. And Tiger Woods is he that kind of guy that he can no matter what he does, he's a winner. Even this week, I saw him on TV multiple times before this week. What happened to Tiger Woods? Anybody know?
Drunk driving. He like flipped it over because he said he's looking down at his phone, but
He wasn't under the influence, but not alcohol. His alcohol was 0.0. There was this day, I read he had opioids in his pocket. He has a drug problem. But you know, he's going to be. There's President Trump, when he gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, said a global symbol of American excellence, devotion, and drive. And so if the issue is, you know, is the game here to win? And if I win, will everybody forgive all these other blemishes? Right? That nice guys finish last and winners do whatever it takes to win. Now, you all don't remember. I remember when his doctor was stopped and got in trouble for ferrying steroids into the United States. And so there was some, you know, if you've ever looked at Tiger Woods physically, he's obviously not proportioned like other golfers. He's very muscular, was at the time. And so there was a lot of people thinking, you know, that he was doing steroids as well. And so, but you know, how is it that he hasn't taken a hit in his career over this kind of behavior? Why is it the fact that just winners are win, and that's all you got? If you win, everything is forgiven. What do you think, Hao Cheng? Is that what it takes? If you're a winner, everybody will look over your personal blemishes, your personal life that's a trash can, your drug use, your alcoholism, as long as you're winning, that's all that matters. Maybe. It's working for Tiger, right? It's you can't argue that it's not working for Tiger. Let's talk about to our athletes. Kennedy, if you're the winner, is everything else forgiven? If you're the one you're on the baseball team, right? Softball. So if you're one hitting a homer every game, you know, then you can do what you want in academics here, do what you want downtown, partying, getting drunk, and your coach won't think a thing about it because as long as you hit the homers, everything's okay, right?
Don't want to say yeah, but like I feel like that typically is what happens is that if you have a lot of money or like you're the best at something, like you can usually make up for it because you're helping in other places and it kind of can be pushed back.
Okay. All right. Well, boy, this is disappointing, I guess. Here we are trying to think of elevating ourselves into some sort of an ethical high ground here. This isn't working, is it?
Like, what's happening in your personal life shouldn't decide its consequences in your life. Should we keep them separate? If my actions in my personal life are not affecting, say, business, then I shouldn't have to suffer consequences in a professional setting.
Okay, that's a very good point. People compartmentalize. They say, okay, Bill Gates is for years was driving Microsoft. People were making tons of money. The fact that he had problems with his wife at home, what's that got to do with his business? We're talking, that's personal. This is business, right? We're separating those. What you do personally, whether what your habits are, whatever those habits might be. Okay, whether those with regard to drugs or whether with regard to sexual behavior, it's not business. So what do we care? What do we care? Okay. All right, but is that right? Is the question. All right, so so I put it this way, and I think I'm summarizing what you're saying. Winning is rewarded in our society, and people will look past a lot in terms of your personal life, whether it's sports or business. But it breaks down at some point, right? And where does it break down? Where does it break down? Catherine, where did it say, okay, Tiger's gone too far, or Bill Gates has gone too far, or pick a character. When do you think that, okay, they're winners, they've always been winners, but now the tide of public sentiment is turning against them?
I don't know. I think it just kind of depends on like who's the one like judging. Like if it's somebody that's like just cares more about rules, then like it will be like earlier. But if it's somebody that is like a big fan of them and is like overlooking it, then it could be later.
Okay, I'll support that with a thing I read in Wall Street Journal yesterday. They were talking about Tiger's problems, and they basically it was sort of we love him, we know he's troubled, kind of a thing. It's kind of no, they're not coming down on him. They're still just basically saying, yeah, he has troubles. And if you ever look back at quotes about what Trump said about him, he would say something really nice. Then he would say this little extra clause, but he has some difficulties, and like, well, read into that what you will, right? Okay, read into what you will. But I think there's a place where it breaks down. If you use, let's use Barry Bonds as an example. Barry Bonds has hit the most home runs in baseball of all time, but he's not in the Hall of Fame, right? He's not in the Hall of Fame. Connor, why do you think that they won't vote him into the Hall of Fame? I mean, if you get the most homers, more than Babe Ruth, more than all these other famous ball players, why is he not in the Hall of Fame?
Well, because he used steroids, and I don't think it matters.
He was never caught doing that.
Everyone was back then. I don't think it's a big deal. Like if he like killed a guy, obviously that'd be pretty bad. If it's like an O.J. Simpson thing, then that's like kind of where the line's like drawn, where it's like, oh, that's like someone's like life. But if it's like you're not like taking a life or like I don't know.
I'm trying to extract from that defining more where the line is. What line did Barry Bonds cross, Sandra? That yes, he was taking steroids, though he was never caught. Why? What did he do wrong that all of a sudden Tiger's okay with a drug addiction problem, but Barry Bonds is not? Can you make it? Yeah, I mean, you might not know baseball, and it's just okay.
I think it just calls into question their character. So if you're willing to, I guess, not take responsibility in the sense of like being an athlete that works hard in like the traditional sense, then you're not willing to, then you can't be a role model to others in different capacities. Like you can't be a team member, you can't like, do X, Y, and Z.
You raise a really good point, the taking responsibility. I don't think Tiger has ever said, I'm not to blame or anything like that. I think that's a really important thing. Whereas Barry Bonds has always been, he just clammed up. This is, things should be fair to me. He's never basically said, kind of confessed to whatever it was that, he might have done at that time. Some players have, some players haven't. So that I think, being honest to the public may be a big differentiator. Yes, I've made mistakes. All of a sudden people go, yeah, we all make mistakes. And they appreciate that honesty. That may be a big deal in terms of the public opinion or people's opinions about you, is if, your winning is fine, but when you fail, we're willing to forgive the fact that you cheated to get there. I put it this way. When your winning is causing harm to others, when what you've done to win is now recognized to harm others. Now that could be true of Tiger as well. But in the case of Barry Bonds, I just put some facts together. If you look over here at the corner, this is in his career, Barry Bonds, the number of times at bat he had to be to get a homer. And as you noticed, when he got older, he was hitting more homers, okay? He also was a little bit heavier and so forth. But he needed fewer at-bats to hit a homer, causing people to suspect the foul play that he would never admit to. And his performance couldn't be comfortably explained by supporters. Now, in the job situation, that might be, hey, that person is getting contracts and bids that we don't understand how he or she got that. There's something going on here. There's some kind of a conflict that's taking place, but they keep winning, but we don't know how anymore. Another thing, and I'm going to bring to the point of he's hurting other people, is that the percentage of his homers that he got after age 35 was the highest on record. Now, there was someone who tied that in terms of the percentage of homers after age 35, a guy named Rafael Palmeiro, who was suspended for taking steroids, though he never admitted to it. And so, you start to create sort of an evidence that, okay, this person's not playing fair. And in the case of the baseball, there's a lot of historical purists. That's taking away from their heroes like Babe Ruth or whoever, Hank Aaron, people who did it the right way. All of a sudden, they're going to put this guy on top of the mountain when he's obviously cheating. Okay, that bothers people. People who don't like to see the game played, in an unfair way. And so there's here's a really kind of thing that bothers me a lot in terms of this notion of winning takes care of everything. So let's see, Tube. If in business or in sports, if I cheat to get ahead, where's the harm? In sports, I would take drugs and get performance-enhancing drugs, do better. And there's ways that over the years, there have been ways I could do that without getting caught. So, okay, that's the history of the games. In business, it's a little different, but I can bribe. I can bribe to get things. I can use relationships. I can try to undermine my opponents by telling lies about them and so forth. So anyway, what harm is it? Who's harmed in the cheating? If no one's harmed, is there a problem?
There is no problem in the short term, but in the long term, we are reaching fair play again. Like the same sports. You use whatever to cheat and no one is catching you. It's fine, but when someone starts doing it, and actually you know it, that this person is doing something, but you can't even say that this person is doing it because you now it's coming with you. It becomes unfair. But if you are doing it and you are winning, it sounds fair to you at that point.
So here, let me rephrase. Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying, if you look at, some of you like soccer games, right? If you look at soccer stars or if you look at baseball stars, the argument would be, if they're using performance enhancing drugs, that they were going to score a lot of goals or hit a lot of home runs, regardless of whether they took performance enhancing drugs. They just did a few more. So what's the harm? They just did a few more, right? Barry Bonds would have hit a lot of home runs. So what's the problem? What's the problem? Okay. The salesperson would have done fine. What's the problem if he cheats a little to do even better? Who's harmed? You see where I'm coming with this, Gray? Or go ahead.
I mean, that's, for example, in football, you do it too much. You raise the expectations. So whoever comes to you, like you're doing, so you raise the bars too high.
So they're cheating out all the other players. Okay. They're cheating all the other people in the business. It's sort of like, if you want to think about this in an accounting context, a little bit of a very lower level kind of thing. But if I say that I'm doing audit work and I say it took me 20 hours when it took me 30 hours, I'm getting myself less pay. I'm making myself look better. I'm taking less pay to look better. But where's the harm? The harm is in other people that are following afterwards, right? So I'm harming other employees. I'm harming the partners who have to plan for the job next year. I'm harming, in baseball or in sports. A lot of people think cheating is victimless, but not if you think it through. Not if you think it through. This is kind of a thing out of Sports Illustrated, and they were talking to ball players who hadn't taken the steroid, and they basically said, hey, I didn't make the team, or I didn't make the professional team because I didn't do what the other guys were doing. And so I'm not going to be a professional ball player. I'm not going to make a living doing this, my dream, because others decided that they needed to cheat. Okay. And I think if you think about it, in almost every cheating circumstance, somebody's getting hurt. And I think when that hurt becomes obvious to people, that you're willing to hurt others to get what you want, that's when I think the tide of sentiment turns against you. You're an SOB. You're no longer someone they want to deal with. Okay. So I think that's a really, to me, in terms of the question I was asking, where does the line get drawn? The line gets drawn when it becomes obvious that your misbehavior, going against the rules, bending the rules, even if you're just bending the rules and not breaking them, then people are going to say, okay, that's, you're no longer going to be, receive their support on those situations. And so, what's the reputational impact? Well, these were basically, this was out of the paper today. They're still, that's his mugshot for this week. Yeah, he's still having a hard time. But you might not, how do people lose their trust in a guy like Tiger, even though he's well recognized as, one of the world's greatest golfers ever? He apparently is dating Donald Trump's daughter-in-law. And I didn't know that, but they won't let him drive. They won't let him drive anybody, a family member around. So if he's there on a date or whatever he's doing, I guess he's got to be driven by the Secret Service because they don't trust him to drive the car. So his problems are pretty well known, right? So is there a reputational impact from unethical behavior? Well, who wants to be associated with a cheater, with a Barry Bond? And that, in business relationships, trust is extremely important. I can't tell you how, I can't even express how important it is in business relationships that your word is your bond, and that all that kind of good stuff we talked about before. And once bitten, twice shy. Once you hurt someone unethically by maneuvering goalposts, by telling someone a lie about you or any of that thing, those people will, they'll never be trusted again, and that will affect them in the long run. It will. It's sometimes when you see a guy like Tiger Woods, you think, no, there's never a comeuppance for cheaters, but maybe that's the case. But more often, it's not the case that they can skate through all this. More often, it becomes difficult for their business and difficult for their relationships. So anyway, let's go to the second case. Any other comments about that before I close out? Okay. Let's go. The second case is a little bit more focused in the sense the issue is the story is that there's a legislator in Canada who is submitting or tabling a bill against genetic discrimination, so that insurance companies can't consider in their rate structures anything of genetic information that they might get. Okay, and so the question. There's a couple questions we'll ask, but let's talk about this just a little bit. Has anybody done a 23andMe? Greg, you did a 23andMe? Did you? Anybody else do it? You know what 23andMe is? Did you have to submit blood for that? Spit. Okay. And then they take that and they do genetic testing. Okay. Would you be okay if your health insurance company raised your rates because they said, we notice in your gene pool a tendency towards cancer? You'd have a problem with that? Okay. How about for your life insurance company? You want to get life insurance and they say, we think you're going to die young, Gray. It's just the statistics are that your genes indicate you're going to die young. Would you have a problem that you couldn't get life insurance? Do you know that they can do that? That's perfectly legal in the US. Life insurance can use information of this nature. I'll just give you a story. I applied for life insurance somewhat late in life. It's a long story. Not such a good financial planner, I guess. Anyway, I did, and so I was filling out their question set, and I tell my father died at 59 and a half. So they denied me. Said, your father died young, you're going to die young. So I said, well, my father died of an unusual cancer. It's not hereditary. So I had to defend myself. I shot back at them. And they said, oh, okay, but you have sleep apnea, so we're still denying you. I said, well, I've got that taken care of this other way. They said, well, okay, we'll insure you. So they will, if they see any weakness, and if anybody here like to take a lot of naps during the day? You like to take a nap?
I like to, but
Okay, you like to take. Would you consider yourself a person prone to naps? Just like Don't tell your insurance company that.
Yeah.
You're not going to get life insurance. They're going to say, okay, that's because you are more likely to get dementia. And so they're going to, and now with AI, Imagine how much more power they have in this. You're only going to get life insurance if you're going to live a long, long time. So if there's any indicator that that you're not going to live a long time, I mean, from their perspective, they're betting. This is a betting arrangement, right? They want to bet on the horse that's most likely to go the distance. And if they have some concern that you're not going to go the distance, why make that bet? So it is an issue. I'll show you some things that the different countries do about this. But in the US, as far as life insurance goes, it's very problematic. Okay. And because they also can get access to your medical records, even if you don't send them your spit, okay, they're going to look at your pharmacy records. And they say, whoa, I noticed you're taking XYZ drug. That means you've got XYZ problem. Looks like you don't get life insurance. Okay. So that's, an interesting phenomenon. So is it unethical for these insurance companies? Let's just talk about health insurance for a minute. Is it unethical for them to charge higher risk people a higher premium than low risk? So maybe you're younger and you have sleep apnea. It's not uncommon. Or you have any number of problems. Is it okay for insurance companies to take that into consideration? Do you think, Remy? Can health insurance companies consider your health situation in terms of their pricing structure?
We set a lower price for students like
Okay.
still like 20s, and we are less likely to get a very severe disease. But for elders, they probably more likely to have issues like high sugar level.
Yeah, a good example, sugar level.
Right, or diabetes. I don't know. So they're probably gonna charge.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead, Kalai.
It's unethical because I think that's the business model of insurance and that risk. But it's probably more of a moral question, like moral. Unless you were using the tools.
Yeah, it's really kind of a challenge. You got Tube?
It's unethical because when they say these problems are not so you get demotivated. It's more like a life torture. Even let's say your life expectancy was 70 years, but now someone's told you based on your records, you're likely to die maybe get demotivated. You are likely to die maybe 55. Or you won't reach yourself. So I think it's
yeah, it's really challenging. I think when you talk about health insurance, now they've made it difficult since Obamacare. They did something that from a perspective of finance I don't understand, because they've talked about no pre-existing conditions. That if you've got a problem, you can jump and get health insurance. And say, oh, it looks like I've got terminal cancer. Oh, I'm gonna go get health insurance, or I'm gonna go get life insurance. Now, life insurance, it's not gonna happen, but health insurance you can get because they can't stop it. Okay. So the key is, to get a pool, to not allow insurance companies to hive off. Okay, those of you who are all healthy, I want your business. Once you turn 30, I'm dropping you. Okay, it reminds me of a joke about our president that before he was president, he married quite a few women, I guess, and the joke went like this: that Donald Trump had just divorced his wife. It seems she had violated one of the terms of the prenuptial agreement. She turned 30. So what if health insurance companies did the same thing? Well, you turned 30. It looks like I'm no longer interested in your keeping you as a health insurance client, type of thing. So that's not something that's available for them. You could argue, is that unethical? It's a simple risk mathematics, right? Because if you're younger, you don't expect to pay as much. And then in that case, your health insurance would get higher and higher and higher as you got older, which they don't do because of the way they've structured health insurance in the U.S. So that they can't make that kind of discrimination. But would it be unethical for them to charge higher risk people? the way they structured it now, you know, they really can't do that. If you are just going to get health insurance as opposed to just transferring over, they could turn your business down. They could turn your business down and say, no, you know, in other words, has anybody seen a family situation along these lines where there's been a healthcare problem? Okay. All right. Well, it's really just an issue of where the government can override economic sense. Say, we don't care about the economics of this. This is the way we're going to make you do it. Okay. Are insurance companies acting responsibly, ethically, when they require customers to disclose medical information? You know, can they ask for this? And I mean, what do you think about that, Gwenny? That can the insurance company ask you about your health? Ask you, you know, how many naps do you take? How many candy bars do you like to eat in a day? Do you jog? Do you exercise? Is it okay if they ask you that kind of question? What happened to your parents? When did they die? Are they alive?
I can't understand why they ask that. I would, you know, this company.
Yeah.
Because this is kind of my privacy.
Yeah, I can guarantee you AI is going to go through any answers to the questions and determine your risk profile, and they're going to determine whether they accept you or not. Okay, and so that's, and you know, they have to make money to stay alive, right? They can't be the only insurance company that has nothing but sick people. And so I can understand this from an economic perspective. They need a pool of healthy and sick people together to stay alive as a business. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So how can they do that in a reasonable way? A lot of that is really a governmental question as opposed to, you know, the government's going to set the tone for how this is going to happen. Yeah, Kennedy?
I feel like in this example, like I don't see an issue with them asking for medical information because I think there are some factors that you can control yourself. Like if you're a smoker, you're more likely to get lung cancer, that kind of thing, and that like affects them. So I think it's only fair that if you're doing things that are like in your control, to know that and consideration, but not like.
Yep. No, I mean, that's a good point because, and that insurance idea has been floated. If you're, you know, they have non-smoking insurance. What's the other bad habits? Any vices? Huh? Yeah, drinking, smoking. But they actually peg the insurance pricing to that characteristic, because that is a big problem medically. It causes a lot of healthcare expenses and earlier death. Yeah, it's perfectly fine for them, in my opinion, to gather that information. They need to understand their business model. They need to, again, they're placing bets. They have to have they have to manage that risk pool, and but I think it'd be very important that that's not shared with anybody. That's for sure. And that's why there's HIPAA. You know what HIPAA is, right? Everybody signs HIPAA when if they go even for a routine checkup, that medical information isn't going to be shared with others. But your prescription information, I'm not so sure that's not shared. Okay. That would be a problem because whatever medical problem you've got, you know, usually ends up in the pharmacy, right? And from the pharmacy, they will deduce what problems you have. So, okay, you're taking is this a prescribed thing if you're trying to stop smoking? The patches. You're taking a patch. Okay, well, we know you're a smoker now. You told us you weren't, but it looks like you are. Okay. Anyway, a couple things on this. Your prescription history, you know, is something you might want to watch to determine if that actually is available. There are databases out there that show what medications people are taking. Medical groups share information as well with other medical organizations. That's the same thing like with FICO scores, your credit scores. So you might want to just be aware of that in the underwriting process. They really want to do everything they can to figure out exactly what your risk is for a health problem, and from the insurance company, life insurance companies, what your likelihood of death is. That becomes a very important thing. Did you know that at least in the U.S., the genetic information doesn't apply to life insurance? I mentioned that before. But also, if you misrepresent your health situation, then and you die of something, or have a health problem within 2 years, and saying I didn't have a problem, but it turns out you did, then they can deny coverage. So you have to tell them the truth on those forms. And if you try to tell them something different and they want to challenge it, they find out, oh, you didn't tell me you had cancer, but it turns out you've had cancer for a long time. Then that contract is null and void. Yeah, Catherine.
So actually, like a life insurance. So I feel like I've heard all of this stuff from them, and they've had a lot of occasions where people will like go over something or like not mention something, and then they'll find it in like medical report.
Yep. And it's bad news, right? Because those families are counting on those funds. That used to be that, and I'm not sure how this is now. Maybe you could ask your folks about this, but there's a provision in a life insurance that if you kill yourself within 1 year of the policy, that they're not going to pay out. I don't know if that's still in place. And then I think there was some argument about this. Say, listen, someone that kills themselves has a medical problem. They have a mental health problem. It's not like they bought the insurance and then because they had the insurance, now they're going to kill themselves. So there's some debate about, okay, whether, that's an issue or not. AI is going to put this on steroids because all these insurance companies, health and life, want to bet on the right horse, okay, metaphorically speaking. So you might be interested in this. Just quick to move on to the next thing. If you have cancer in Europe, that after 5 to 10 years, you don't have to tell the insurance companies about it. Basically, you have a right for that disease to be forgotten, and the insurance companies can't take that into consideration. That's kind of interesting. We don't have that in the U.S. In Canada, they have genetic privacy where life insurance can't use those genetic tests. So, Gray, you're safe, okay, if you're in Canada. But sorry, looks like you're here in the U.S., so you've given it away. And then in Australia, it's basically the insurance companies have to ask very specific things, because if they say, tell us about your health, and you don't mention something, they could use that against you. But in Australia, they basically say, no, you can only contest a claim if you're very specific about what you asked them about and they lied about it, right? You can't just do some generic thing, but that makes sense to me. So anyway, the proposal that our case was talking about, and I'll close on this, was that she was opposed to genetic discrimination for 3 reasons. She wanted to have this bill against genetic discrimination. And my understanding is that this has to do with health insurance as opposed to life insurance, but it could apply to either one. So the question is, who's against it? Who's against it? You want your insurance? Who's going to be against not being able to use genetic information for insurances, health or life? Who would be opposed to that? Harun? Who's going to be opposed to that bill? So this legislation that's being proposed in the case is to not allow insurance companies to use genetic information at all. So why would you oppose that? No, I wouldn't oppose it. Who's going to oppose it? Why is this going to be a heavy lift? Insurance companies. Insurance companies are going to oppose this because they want that information. They want that information. This is, for them to be profitable, it's all about a numbers thing. It's all about risk management and the risk pool. And the more information they have, the better they can manage their own profitability, right? So they're going to want it and they're going to fight it like heck. And did anybody out of curiosity check this out to see if this is a true story? And what was the outcome of this case or this bill? Did it ever go anywhere? Okay, that would be like to get a 10 on the question, right? Okay, I gotta see, this is real. So I'll check into it before our next meeting. I'll see if this is actually what's happened to this particular bill, okay? All right, let's move on to some new material. And the first piece of new material is actually goes back to still in chapter 2, is the ethical decision model. And before we get to the ethical decision-making model, there was the common sense test. And these things are actually make a lot of sense. We can talk about deontology and teleology and all this stuff. And a lot of times it's what people think, or what's more common is something as simple as I think your text calls the sniff test. Like that doesn't smell right. That's the wrong way to go. There's people are going to be bothered if I make that decision. They're going to think this, or they're going to think that. And so the smell test is just that gut feeling that nobody's going to like the direction you're going, because they're not going to feel it's fair or honest or just or what have you. And so that's one measure that's you can apply to ethical decisions you may have to face. Some look at it as, would you want your decision to be on the front page of the newspaper? You want the whole world to know this is how you decided whatever, right? Whatever that thing is. You decided to fire. I'll give you a simple example in business. When I was in public accounting, occasionally we had administrative staffs, and sometimes the administrative staff worked out well, and sometimes they didn't work out well, okay? And so partners hired this new administrative staff, and this particular woman was beautiful, super beautiful. I mean, like, she should have been a model, and she dressed like it. All of the other administrative assistants that were female, of course, what happened? They don't like her. They don't like her. It's like, okay, this is, I don't, that's human nature. Okay, they didn't like it. And so what happened was, because the dissension got to be problematic, what the partners decided to do is they said, well, they declared a financial exigency. It looks like we're not doing as well as we wanted to do, and it looks like we're going to have to trim some staff. So the new hire, the beautiful young lady, she got her walking papers. They had to let her go. Everybody was sad. And 2 weeks later, guess what? They had to hire a new administrative assistant, and that's what they did. So it's kind of like, okay, if you're the partner, would you want that particular maneuver spread about in the community? Partners fabricate an exigency to let people go and then turn around and rehire a different set of people. That, to me, that's it's rather than just dealing with the problem. It's so sometimes front page test, or if I told my mom I made this decision for this reason, what would be her impression of that decision, right? So that's another way to look at it. Social media test is probably the biggest one today. If this were spread about on Snapchat or TikTok or Facebook or whatever your concern is, if everybody heard what you did, the decision you made, then how uncomfortable would that make you? Or our last is the golden rule test. Would you like this? Would you like to be treated this way, the way you're treating others, right? whether it's as a manager or whether it's in relationships with other people or relationships with your coworkers, whatever the situation is, whether it's in business decisions with customers, business decisions with suppliers, you know, we're making decisions all the time, all around us. Okay. So those are some what they call common tests. So if you put it into the decision-making model that your book is talking about, to pull all this together up till now, it's like, okay, I've got a decision to make. Okay, I need to fire some employees, and I can make some picks among them. So in the case that I just gave you, well, I've got a lot of pushback on the young new hire, and I want to figure out how to handle this. Okay, how to handle this. Should I just give in to the jealousies of the other staff, or should I make them kind of come to grips with that's not the right way to go with this, right? So that's a decision that has to be made. And I've got to figure out, okay, if I were this young person who seemed to be doing a pretty decent job, is it fair to her? Would I want that done to myself or to my child or, someone in my world? So if there's no problems found, if it passes the sniff test, you could stand in front of everybody about this and say, hey, this is the way I made the decision. I stand by it. That's all good. You can go to the final decision. If you got some concerns about it, then maybe you need to factor it through these models that we were talking about. Okay, who's benefiting from this? Who benefits the most? What's the greatest good? Does this align with my, my core beliefs about what's right and what's wrong? Or does this line up with issues of character and motivation that, that I think are that I may need to stand by, even if others are going to criticize me for it. Like if my partner would have just kept that young woman on, even though she was causing some dissension, there's going to be some pain to that. It's not going to go away real quickly. It's the cheap, easy way out to just terminate the person and move on. So anyway, I thought it was that's an interesting model that's in your text because it kind of consolidates all of these issues or different ways to think through a problem. Because one of the problems that we have, there's a thing called a stage. Hold on a second here. It's well, basically, it divides moral decisions into two categories: those which we make quickly based on intuition, and those that we think through. So a lot of times we make a decision quickly on intuition, and when we should be thinking it through a little bit more thoroughly. And so a lot of us operate on that gut feel, and when the gut is wrong, we pay a heavy price. So anyway, this is the think it through model. Think it through can be very helpful. Okay. So how did we get here to this situation where so much of what we think about, so much of what we have to deal with, there's so much concern in the marketplace about ethics and honesty, and it's as if everybody's cheating. So if you look historically at this, going back to 1934 when the SEC came to be in 1934 and 35. Since then, you have, I guess, the next big thing having to do with honesty and ethics was really in 1977 with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which we'll talk about in just a minute. After 77, everything got heated up a lot in between 1995 and 2002. Now, part of that problem, the reason there were a lot of accounting breakdowns there, and there were a lot. I'll show you a little list here in just a minute. Actually, I'll skip I'll skip and come back. But just to give you a sense, in 96 was Boston Chicken, 96 was also Waste Management, 2000 was Enron, Xerox, Adelphia, AIG, Bristol Myers, HealthSouth, Quest, Tyco, WorldCom, Freddie Mac, Global, although this rush here caused a lot of panic in the marketplace, okay? And one of the reasons that was taking place, this is something to consider. Let me ask you, anybody want to posit a hypothetical or hypothesis as to why were there so many frauds in that time period? Anybody know? Anybody take a guess? I have a theory. Jennifer, you have any idea? I know you were what year were you born? 2004. Okay, so you're having to look past before you were born. Okay, all right. That's probably problematic for you. Anybody know? Claude, were you born before? Just a while back, huh?
I would say there weren't as many scandals prior for there to be like a president. So that kind of behavior was not as regulated.
Okay. Let me tell you, because Arthur Andersen collapsed after this time period, because a lot of these companies were Arthur Andersen clients. I've read Arthur Andersen's the book by one of their partners, What Was Going On. But her thought was, in this particular book, was that the problem with Arthur Andersen, which a lot of the frauds occurred under with their audit clients, was that the problem was driven by Y2K. With Y2K, Y2K was the idea that the computers were not set up to adjust to the year 2000. The computers had a limit and they weren't able to go to 2000, and everybody was concerned that computers were going to just shut down. And so all of the accounting firms were focused on providing services to rewrite all of their code to adjust to this Y2K fear. So Arthur Andersen, all the other firms are making a ton of money. Their total focus is on that consulting part of their business, solve the Y2K issue. Because I mean, think about it. If you're General Motors and all of a sudden your whole computer system is going to shut down, that's an incredibly large concern, right? So all of the firms were making a ton of money doing this consulting, and when they gave because that focus shifted to their consulting arm, the auditing arm became something that people weren't worried about, they didn't care about. It became a secondary focus, to say the least, almost disliked within the firm, because it's like, we're not making any money here, we're making all this money over there, and this is what we're getting here. And so that's one way to think about it. But after all those scandals occurred, the WorldCom we'll talk about this week. Enron I'll talk about in just a minute, some others. Then Sarbanes-Oxley kicked in because they said we've got to fix some of this. There's certain fixes to address these problems. And these fixes are they're very interesting, they're very useful. And if you think about it, for the most part, Sarbanes-Oxley has worked very, very well. I turned that off. Okay. Anyway, it's worked very, very well. The big frauds that have occurred since 2005-ish have mainly been outside of the U.S. Carillion, Deutsche Bank, some others. So Sarbanes-Oxley, a big role. We'll be talking about that some more. Again, this is kind of a rehash of what I just said. There were some others I didn't mention. Sunbeam was, I think, in 1997. I think I gave a listing of the others. So you can see in that 2001 to 2002 period of time, all kinds of hell was breaking loose. The firms themselves some small bit of problems. Then in 2008 came the big meltdown of the financial services industry. All of a sudden, stock market as a whole dropped 50%. I remember that. I was watching my retirement plan. Like, oh, hey, it's worth half what it was worth yesterday. A lot of people remember that. A lot of us boomers say, we were very aware that, and it could happen today too. So that was a big deal. Lehman Brothers went out. There are movies made about this. If you watch The Big Short, you can see some other details about it. So that came along, and since 2008, we've been kind of on a good ride. Some limited problems, really and truly. We're going to talk about the Walmart bribery, which was around 2012. We'll talk about that a little bit. Later on, we're going to talk about, this week, we're going to talk about WorldCom. Wells Fargo was around 2015, but that wasn't really a fraud case. That was just a strange case of ethical misbehavior in a big way. So long story short, the reason we have an ethics course today, the reasons why you're here, is that so much of this was going on, and this is just my short list. I didn't bring it up to date. I should have brought it. There's been a few since then. If you go to the SEC website, you can quickly get an update on other issues. But you can see there's kind of a constant stream of companies that have questionable financial statements, and that something in the financial statements is misrepresenting the truth, and it ends up being, usually all of these will end up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. They don't happen all that often. Okay, so in terms of why do these things happen, your textbook likes to focus a lot on leadership, which is good, right? Leadership where things break down because at the top, they're not setting the right tone. Okay, so directors, we'll talk about this. The directors are asleep at the switch. They don't care. You've got directors that are conflicted. When I say conflicted, they're getting a lot of money to be directors. They're getting a lot of money to not pay much attention. Or they do business with the company that they're a director on. Even though they're an outside director, they do business with the company. Okay, not an uncommon situation. So they're basically have a conflict of interest right off the bat. They're not setting the right kinds of policies for internal control and risk management, and consequently that breaks down inside the organization. We'll be going through 3 big examples in the next 3 weeks. They also, the common thread is that the problems are known within the company, but it doesn't make its way to the right people in the organization or outside of the organization. So you'll have a whistleblower in the case of Wells Fargo and some other cases, Monsanto case. Whistleblower was there, but they basically just, they weren't listened to, and they were sidelined in the company. They weren't necessarily fired, although sometimes they made life miserable for them, so they quit. So in the case of Wells Fargo, there were a lot of whistleblowers, but it didn't get to the board of directors. Management got a hold of it and punished the employees for raising the issues. So those are the kinds of problems that have gone on. And so having a structure inside the organization that makes sure, number one, that whistleblowers can communicate to the audit committee is now necessary because of SOX. That's a requirement of SOX. You can't have whistleblowers that pass information to management. Okay, if management gets a hold of it, they're just going to come down and say, "What's wrong with you? You don't understand." So the whistleblower communications go to the audit committee. The audit committee management eventually will get a hold of it, but the audit committee is only of outsiders. They're not of people who have a connection to the company itself. So they are now responsible for that. Once it gets, like Claude was saying, once I tell the audit committee, "Hey, I saw this particular crime taking place," the audit committee can't unsee it, right? I've communicated to them, here's a problem. Now the audit committee has a problem. How do we deal with this? We've been warned, right? So all of a sudden things have to take, action has to ensue. They have to investigate to see what's going on there. By the way, we'll get to this later on, but whistleblowers also have nowadays have a chance of getting a big payday because the law allows whistleblowers, if the company doesn't act on the problems that the whistleblowers bring up, and it's later found to be a fraud of such and such dollar amount, the whistleblower gets 10 to 20% of that. So there's actually a financial incentive nowadays for whistleblowers to whistleblow, okay? So Enron had all this. I don't want to get into the details of Enron. It's an old story. Their stock price collapsed. Your book mentions it. I'm only bringing it up briefly to say Enron was the most complicated fraud I've ever seen by a long shot. It was complicated. They were using special purpose entities, separate little companies around them to dump their losing investments and to guarantee the investments they held, guarantee their investments against future losses. You can read it in the text, or you can do an AI search on it. Imagine if you can set up a separate company, and that separate company will buy an asset of yours that you at above market price. Your company can recognize a gain, and the other company just takes it on their books at whatever they paid for it. Okay, it's like, okay, well, that's a way I can kind of manage my profitability. That's one way. Okay, and if I don't have to consolidate my books with their books, then that's the problem with a special purpose entity. So they create a separate company simply to hide losses. And they also created one so that if I have an investment, that basically they played the role of an options. Some of their special purpose entities played this role of guaranteeing the price of stock. So that the price of stock went down, the special purpose entity would make it up, kind of like a put type of option situation where they would basically reimburse them for their loss. So it's like an insurance arrangement. And so the problem was the special purpose entity was funded with Enron stock. So long story short, they eventually ran out of any kind of resource to continue to insure. So those are just some examples. That's a very complicated mess there. But those stories, when stories like that get out, it makes a problem for auditors. It creates a crisis of confidence. Everybody wanted stricter regulations, and that's what they got. And we'll be talking about some of those. Not Sarbanes-Oxley later on this semester. I'll talk a little bit about FCPA, which predates that here in a minute. But definitely is a big issue. And that period of time between 1995 and 2003 in particular kind of set the tone for the world we live in today. Okay. All right. I want to switch gears here. Let's see. Let's look at the time. Let's do this. Since the Walmart is the first case up, I'm going to jump over this. I'm going to talk about these 7 signs of ethical collapse. It doesn't get a lot of mention in your text, but it's very, very good stuff. So I'm basically going to give you a quick, deeper look in that. There's a short description of it in your text, but I'm going to dig into that deeper. But before we go there, to get ready for our next session, where we look at Walmart and their use of intermediaries to bribe public officials in Mexico. In case you didn't know it, as far as ethical business dealings and so forth, in 1977, law was passed in the U.S. that says businesses cannot pay bribes in foreign countries. Okay, so we don't want our businesses undermining the governments of other countries. And the reason we don't is, guess what? We were. We were creating problems, okay? If you've ever read the story of ITT, the ITT Corporation, at one point in time, they were basically running a company in South America. And I forget which one, but they basically had whole scale, all the government officials were on their payroll. And so we didn't want that. We wanted to keep out of the affairs. It became a kind of a national security issue, an international relations issue. We said to companies, do not bribe government officials in other countries, okay, period. And another part of that law said you need to keep books and records and internal controls that are adequate so that if we look into your books and records, we'll find your bribes. So if you don't keep adequate books and records, you're violating the FCPA, okay? And because of the FCPA, that's why you have COSO, committee. So if you wanted to connect accounting classes, Committee of Sponsoring Organizations puts out a guideline for what's effective internal control, right? And so COSO is a result of the FCPA, because the problem is how do I prove that I have adequate books and records to the government if they were to knock on my door and threaten me with violating FCPA? I said, well, this COSO standards, I'm going to have Gray come in and review my internal controls by this COSO standard and say I have effective controls or I don't. And if he says I have effective controls, the government can't say I don't, and I'm in compliance with not only with internal control standards and the audits relate to that. I'm also I'm inoculated against any claims that say that I'm violating the FCPA as far as the books and records standard. Okay, so I can't bribe government officials. It applies worldwide. Doesn't matter where I'm at in the world. So if Walmart's doing business, I don't know if you know this, but Walmart has more stores in Mexico than it does in the United States. Bet you didn't know that. Yeah. So whatever business they do down there, they better not be bribing officials, which you're going to read in the case. Well, it looks like they did. All right. So the basic idea is, who does it apply to? Any company, officer, director, employee, or agent of the company. So I can't hire someone to go bribe for me. Anything of value, there's no materiality threshold here. I can't give $5 to bribe a government official, either directly or indirectly through a third party. There needs to be corrupt intent. I must be trying to get them, I'm trying to influence one of their decisions, i.e. maybe a local zoning law so I can build that store. Okay, and there's all kinds of laws and politicians involved in this. Everybody's got their hand out. It seems like nothing's ever going to happen unless I give them some money to help move the process along. Okay, so I can't, if there's anything provided with the idea of influencing an act or a decision, that's corrupt intent. And it has to be money given to a government official or political party to basically, for my business, to obtain business or retain business. Okay. Got to keep my books and records in order. And in part of the internal control idea here is that when I'm recording my transactions in those countries, I have to have sufficient clarity as to what the money was for. Okay, so I can't have misleading descriptions like promotional expense, consultant fee, when what that really is a bribe. What that really is a bribe. There's ways that we can test for that. We'll talk about it in a minute. One way is that if there's a consultant expense, here's a standard bribery test. So I see that Yu Chen's business is in Mexico, and I'm looking, I see all these consultant expenses. The first question I would ask is, can you show me the contract you have with the consultant? And if he says, contract, didn't have one of those. We're just paying them. It's like, well, that's not normal business. We don't have, if you're going to have a consultant, you're going to have a contract, an arrangement, agreement. If you don't, I know what it is. I know what's going on, right? So as I mentioned before, there's no materiality threshold here, and using intermediaries doesn't get you off the hook. Which you're going to see in the Walmart case, that's kind of what they were doing. They were using intermediaries to do the dirty work and get the plausible deniability. I didn't tell them what to do. I didn't know they were doing that. Okay. The fines are large, up to $2 million in criminal penalties, could be up to $25 million. Also, disgorgement of ill-gotten gains. If you make a bunch of money on your bribery, that's going to get taken away. And it's fines of 100, 250,000 to you individually per violation. So if you do a lot of violations, I'm not sure how they're counting them, but I'd want to know. Okay, if every bribe it rings up another 100,000, that's going to be problematic. Could go to jail for up to 20 years on the individual level. So this is actually a very, very big deal. And if you talk to an executive of an international business, they have a lot of concern about these things because their employees in the other parts of the world, they're operating on a different mindset. To them, bribery is normal. And it's from the US, if you're an SEC exchange traded company, you have to police the behavior of other people in other countries who are used to a very different ethical format for business. And if you do not police them, the company is going to be in trouble. Walmart got in trouble. We'll see that when we get together on Thursday. Okay. So look, time's out. We'll see you then. Have a good day. Beautiful weather. Oh, is that sign up sheet? Yep. Here we go. All right. Sure.
My aunt is gonna visit me during Easter break this Thursday. May I take the absence for some time? All not email, but probably I send during the weekend.
No problem.
Yeah, you can get it.
We're okay.
I will still in. Oh, and I have another.
I just like can't.
We have a homework. I have a work from homework to do before this Thursday, but I didn't find where it's located. Yeah, and I didn't find it.
It's I've got a page number on the syllabus. Questions 1, 4, 5.
He's like the sweetest.
Okay, so I can find it on the syllabus.
Yeah. Well, it's in the book.
Not
So that's what what's stated in the syllabus.
oh, the textbook.
Yeah, but that's off of the textbook. So I probably need to send a note out to people about that. So that gives me 2 things to write about. Go ahead. Hi, Sandra. How are you doing?
I emailed you, but I haven't. I
It was a long time ago. Well,
last
couple
month.
okay. What's the problem?
I think it's self-confusing.
But like I.
That's not like.
Now you can only start this when you have nothing else open, right? You have to shut your machine off, open it up, and then do this. So if you've got anything up there, it's absolutely everything.